Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. I'm Brent Hubbs along with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. Glad to have you along with us. And again, we thank our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. You can check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate or check them out online at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. Guys, let's jump right into it. Rob, let's start with basketball. We'll mix it up a little bit in this podcast. We'll start with basketball. Tennessee needed a road win. They needed a quality win. They had opportunity in front of them in the second half against Auburn when you're up 17 points in Tennessee. Vescovi gets a terrible foul 90 feet away from the basket, and Tennessee just fell apart for the next 7 minutes. As bad of a meltdown as I can remember seeing ever. I mean, it got rolling. Tennessee goes on two scoring drought, one like almost 7 minutes, and another one later on a little over 4 minutes. And this is in the last 14 minutes of the game. I mean, just completely and utterly fell apart. I mean, you got a great game from Jordan Bowden. His career high, 28 points, and he just wadded that up and threw it in the trash can. It didn't get you anything. We talked about Vescovi getting in foul trouble, and that was obviously a factor. I mean, they couldn't get it past half court on several occasions when he was on the bench. But John Fulkerson picking up two fouls before the 17-minute mark and
not playing the next 17 minutes.
Not playing the rest of the first half. I mean, that didn't. Obviously, Tennessee had the lead at halftime and were looking good. But then, Fulkerson never got going on a day where Jordan Bowden gives you 28 points. And if Fulkerson does anything, pretty much, if Fulkerson gives you 10, hey, you probably survive and walk out there with a win. But just showed this team's limitations in a lot of ways. I mean, the fact that we're talking about how much they, losing Vescovi hurt them, kind of just puts a big spotlight on what's wrong. I mean, they couldn't afford to play without a kid who's been here for 7 weeks. Well, that spotlights two things. One, that spotlights the shortcomings of the roster in general. But the other thing too, and I don't want to just beat the kid up, it also spotlights how much Josiah James struggled. I mean, for a guy who, when he came back off a couple of weeks off and gave you a little spark, you felt like there was something there. And then the last two games, it's been not very good. And he was he was bad at Auburn in terms of taking care of the basketball. It looked like he was affected by the environment.
Absolutely.
He looked like
he looked overwhelmed.
He looked like a freshman. And that's another, one of the problems with this roster. Your two primary ball handlers are true freshman guards. They combined for 11 turnovers of the 24 Tennessee had on Saturday. That's not.
Not what you want.
No,
as they say.
Is with James, is that a freshman wall? Is that the injury? Is that a combination of frustrations of the year not going the way he thought he would? I mean, look, he struggled, but he had a couple of really rudimentary type turnovers. You know what I'm saying? The one that travels at the half court line. A guy just takes the ball from him, which is, you got to know that guy's there.
I didn't think he'd rush to get back on defense very good.
And I just don't think he was in there. I mean, I think Auburn took him out of that game mentally. I mean, he only took 2 shots in the game. He was completely passive. In addition to the 6 turnovers, just not aggressive on offense. He just didn't seem to have it in any shape, form, or fashion. For him, I think it's mental. I think he's frustrated because he doesn't feel like he's 100%. But also, I just think he's been asked to do some things right now that he's just, as a freshman, he's not up to doing. So where's this team at right now? I think they're in trouble, man.
You think they're mentally at some point? Don't you think the losing some of these games and the reality setting into the postseason is going to hit them a little bit square in the eyeball?
I think so. But I asked Rick that very question on Monday at his press conference, and he said that he didn't think so. He's like, just the mental makeup. His point was, and I thought it was interesting, he said, I don't think that this one's going to, quote unquote, stay with us. If there was one I thought that they were going to hold on to, it was at South Carolina, because they controlled that game all the way down to like the 2-minute mark, and then threw it away. So I don't. That's the coach's opinion. I personally think with the way the schedule sets up, I'm not sure they win again.
Really?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into an 0-5 close.
What did you think of Rick's comments after the game about not calling a timeout? Obviously, that got a lot of discussion.
When you blow a 17-point lead with 14 minutes to play, you open yourself up for all kinds of criticism. But that's been his MO forever. I
lets them play through it.
I think this year's different because you're not letting Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, Jordan Bone play through it. I would have called a timeout there, like I mentioned on the board, but I think Tennessee loses that game no matter what. The momentum was snowballing, and Rick's been asked about it a couple different times, and he's kind of brushed it off and said he had no confidence that they could execute whatever. Which
I think that made it worse, right?
Well, I just think that's a bad answer.
Yeah,
look,
I
you want
agree.
to say, hey, and again, you got to be. I get you're trying not to be a smart aleck or whatever. You could also come back and say, hey, I've won over 700 games. You know what I mean? I know when to call timeout, or it's my ways worked all right. But to say that. To say that you couldn't execute what you call, that they couldn't execute anything, A, is not fair to a bunch of kids who are rattled, and B, you're not calling a timeout there to get a bucket. I think you're calling a timeout there to try to get somebody to take a deep
I'm with
breath.
you, but again, 48 hours later, he was asked about it after the game. He was asked about it on Monday. he just didn't think that was a turning point.
And clearly, if you go look at his career, everywhere he's been, this is not. He didn't come to Knoxville and decide to change how he was going to handle momentum moments. Whether it's a veteran team or a young team, he's never been one to call a lot of timeouts. He takes those things into the final 2 minutes, and if he doesn't need them, he takes them in the pocket with him in the locker room.
To his point, it's a tie game with 2 minutes left.
Yeah,
But
it was a game you won. You were leading by 17 points with 7 minutes left in the game too. And so I know you're not defending him. I'm just I would
have called a timeout.
Yeah, and I know you said that. And I would have too, particularly with a young team. I think each year is different. I don't think that's a mainstay from a philosophy standpoint. It's one of those deals where if I've got some cagey veterans like I had last year, probably let them play through it. More likely to let them play through it. But if I see Josiah James and he looks like he's got deer in the headlights, and I'm playing Gaines out there and those freshmen, I'm probably a little more quick to try to get them over there to me and huddle them up and see if I can calm them down a little bit more. But
I'm with you. It's bad. Everything. I don't think they're going to make the NCAA no matter what. But everything, that was the first step in doing it.
Yeah, to get back on the bubble, to be in the conversation, you had to go win that game.
Get a quality road, and that would have been their best win of the season, not close.
Right.
And it sets you up if you can get them at home again, if you can get Florida at home. I don't think this team was going to be able to do it, but it keeps hope alive.
Right.
And I just don't see it. I think an NIT bid's kind of unlikely.
All right. So you got Arkansas next on the deal. Where are they at with Joe? They've
got him
been
back.
struggling.
Got him back, and he was dropping bombs on Saturday.
Yeah. So that changes the outlook of them. They're a very different team than what they were coming to Knoxville.
Tennessee will have some advantages. I think Fulkerson will be good inside. The combination of him and Eves, assuming John gets it back. But Arkansas spread the floor, and this is not going to be. I don't think this is going to be a game where Tennessee's going to be able to score in the 60s and win. And they've had a hard time winning games where they couldn't slop it up.
Rob a minute ago said he can see them not winning again. You said on TV Sunday night you thought they were going to lose out. The point is that his theory, while some are going to scoff at that, Arkansas is going to be a tough place to play. As you just said, they got their really good shooter back. Bud Walton's a tough place to play. 2, if you don't beat Florida at home, that means you have dropped both going to Kentucky, and it's not a good shot there. And then if you've lost 3 in a row playing Auburn at home,
and Auburn's going to have plenty to play for.
So, to me, that Florida game, Florida game is massive.
Tennessee's going to have nothing to play for.
But see,
just to get to the NIT.
But Florida's playing to stay in that 8-9 seed to not drop below the bubble themselves.
Florida could have won at Kentucky on Saturday easily.
Yeah.
That was a one possession game in the final 4 minutes. I think they ended up losing by 6 or 7, but they were right there, and had been playing, I think, as good as anybody in the SEC for the last 3 weeks. They're finally looking like they figured some things out.
They finally realized Blackshear's pretty good.
Yeah, well, and as you mentioned, Florida's going to they've got something to play for because they're trying to stay.
And they're better than Tennessee.
Right, and they're trying to stay in that 8-9 game or work themselves up with a tournament run in the conference tournament.
Kentucky's looking to continue to improve their seeding.
Right, because everybody in front of them keeps losing. And then, Auburn's still got they're playing for positioning as well when you look at where that thing's at 2 through 5 in the SEC.
Auburn's going to come in here that Saturday and probably be playing
for the second seed.
For this, to avoid not seeing Kentucky until Sunday.
Yeah. Plus improve their NCAA seeding. So they've got a lot to play for. So how this team responds will be kind of fascinating to watch. Do they still have it in the tank, or are they kind of out of gas?
I don't think they're going to quit or lay down. I just think that this is like a team that, especially on the road, like Saturday at Auburn. That team's not going to go into Rupp and be very competitive. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think Arkansas is not I mean, they're not a juggernaut by any means, but they're tough at home. They got their dude back, and Arkansas still think. I mean, they're 5-9 in the league, but they're 17-10 overall. They're going to think they got a chance to make a run at the tournament.
Sure,
I kind of doubt that, but
close
out with four straight wins.
Well, don't they have a win over at Indiana? Don't they have a couple of quality pre-conference wins?
They were great in the non-conference. So I mean, they've got 4 games left, and they're thinking if they get to 21 wins,
they can make a case for themselves.
They're on the bubble.
Yeah. So plenty to play for there. What does Tennessee have to play for? How does Tennessee play? Can Bowden continue? He certainly looked like he was in rhythm.
And that's one of the things I hate about this game is because everybody had. I mean,
everybody's rode that kid for weeks, and some of it's justifiable. I mean,
but then he finally snaps out of it with a fantastic game on the road. He's the best player on the floor.
Didn't even play there.
And it's not even really a storyline because of the collapse.
Because they blew the lead. I mean, but he was terrific because it wasn't just, he hunted his shot in the right spots. It wasn't that he just settled for a bunch of threes, but he got to the free throw line. He looked like the guy that you thought he was going to be and anticipated him being all season long. But that effort goes for naught as Tennessee could not close it out on the road against Auburn. Now they take to the road against Arkansas, and we'll see what happens with the Volunteers on Wednesday night. We'll continue to cover plenty with this basketball team. Moving forward is, again, can they finish and how they finish will be interesting to watch. February in football has become a bizarre month. I think is the best way to. You know what I mean? With the recruiting dead period, winter workouts without footballs, and everything. It's kind of an interesting time in the month of February with the new calendar and how everything has taken place. Now, it gets cranked back up this weekend. Guys can be on your campus starting on Sunday.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
And we think Tennessee might have a couple guys swing through on Sunday.
Yeah,
possibly.
I mean, they're going to have that 7-on-7 tournament on Saturday in Gatlinburg, and so thus, I think that there's a pretty good chance that some of those guys hang around Saturday night, spend the night, and come visit Tennessee on Sunday. So could be a commitment or two. Could be just some guys Tennessee's got some interest.
A commitment of two guys who are committed.
Guys
visiting,
are committed. Yeah.
Not a commitment or two worth of news on Sunday afternoon.
Slow down, people.
Nobody's committing.
Want to make sure I get that clarification out there. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I mean, like the J3M team will be up here, so that means turn time. That means Dallin Hayden will be back around. Obviously, his brother Chase has got a visit set up in early April to visit Tennessee, so we'll be watching that one. But that's a team that's got some guys on it that Tennessee likes, and I think Caden Martin's playing quarterback for that team right now. Tennessee just offered him. We'll see who else makes it in town. There's the receiver from Alabama that's committed to Tennessee.
Mosley?
Yeah, Jordan Mosley, who will be up in town as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about quarterback and from a recruiting standpoint. And not that we have it mapped out in terms of what the board looks like, but what I mean, you got Cade Martin, who's not in this class that they've offered. Okay, we know where Ty Simpson is, so you got a little better feel for the 22. What do we make of the 21 class? I mean, it's all been about. We've all
does
talked
Miller
about
Moss
Christian,
visit this week? I mean, I would say Miller Moss a guy that comes in on
and that's
Sunday,
the young man from California
that plays for Clawson.
I think Tennessee's going to continue to evaluate a lot of guys, and I know we've talked about Christian Valou, but I think that I think they like Christian. I think there are some concerns there.
Well, that seems that I mean, we had that kind of in the war room. I think it's clear that Christian is a guy that they like, but have just kind of refused to go all in on. I mean, they offered the other kid from Texas. I'm blanking on his name. Let me look it up here while we're spitballing. Kate Salter. They offered him last month. He's a guy, dual threat guy, kind of a shorter quarterback than what Tennessee's been recruiting lately, but only 6'1", but he's a guy that Arkansas, Baylor, a lot of other schools are in on. Can Tennessee get him to campus? Obviously, Miller Moss just got an offer 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. He'll be in Tennessee for that 7-on-7 tournament. Does he have enough interest in playing out of the state of California, where UCLA, USC, all these schools are kind of in on him hard? How interested is he on leaving that state and showing some interest in the Vols? Obviously, he's known the Clawsons, I think, since he was like 7 or 8 years old. So we'll see. I mean, the 21 board is strange because, and we've detailed this, I think, for the last few months, right, AP, that a lot of guys that Tennessee liked, they just were unable to get real traction with, and that's both
they're still
on
swaying
them
up.
and on the prospects just not having that interest in Tennessee. And sometimes it's an every other year thing. The fact that Harrison, 5-star, comes in.
Does that hurt them in 21?
I don't know, because every year, that's not like you see what Alabama and Clemson are doing. I mean, they're getting the 5-stars to kind of line up behind each other. So, but Tennessee went after Eli Stowers,
and then they're
early.
still swinging there, and have had some dialogue with him.
I'm sure.
I think honestly, the way I feel about it, they got a better chance of flipping Eli Stowers from Texas A&M
than Drake May
than they do of Drake May.
Well,
yes.
you and I are in agreement that how many phone calls to Drake May, that until he actually shows up on campus, I just don't believe it.
Yeah, so. I mean, dialogue. I mean, at some point, the dialogue has to become real. I mean, and real
reciprocated.
Real being a.
Well, it's one thing for him to
campus.
Take your phone calls, but I mean, he's got to come back to
That's
campus,
what I'm saying. I mean, I mean, anybody can take a phone call or swap text, but I mean, at some point, it has to. You've got to get on your campus, and it's got to be a real. To make it legitimate and real, you got to get those guys back on your campus. I just find it interesting that. As fast as we know quarterbacks come off the board, and it's you got to be early. Tennessee still seems to be very much in an evaluation mode when it comes to the class of 2021 in the quarterback ranks. Now, part of that I get. The guys that they liked early, they didn't get traction on. They the May
and are now committed elsewhere.
Committed elsewhere.
Danny Griff and some others.
But it's it's kind of interesting that they're.
Which means you better be locking down Ty Simpson in 22.
Well, and you wonder if I don't think the Harrison deal is really scaring people off, because these quarterbacks are looking for the best opportunities to come in and play. But I do wonder if the depth of that room. Now that one of those guys is not going to be here, no matter what, because Jarrett's a senior. But that is, and we'll discuss this kind of as we get into spring and teasing it as a little primer piece. How does Tennessee manage this quarterback room this spring? That's going to be a fascinating. I don't think it's going to look the same on March 8th as it does on May 8th. But you got to get to May 8th, and so that's a long time. Between, even though it's a, quote unquote that'll be here before you know it. You got to manage those 2 months.
Yeah,
and both for the team, and then how does that kind of trickle down to recruiting?
Right. How does that affect you in recruiting?
And you got 3 guys that are sophomores or younger. I mean, that's
and
four guys.
You wonder too if they're hearing if some kids are hearing a little bit of or the kids. I mean, the one thing about the quarterback position is all those guys. The day of where Peyton Manning and Brandon Stewart didn't really know each other when they signed. They hadn't seen each other, didn't know each other's game. That's a different era. I mean, everybody knows who everybody is, not only in their own class, but who's ahead of them and who's behind them. So maybe there's some quarterbacks out there who see, okay, they had Harrison Bailey in this last class, and they know Ty Simpson's in the class behind him. Not that he's in the boat, but that I think the feeling for most people out there is that Ty Simpson's a priority for Tennessee in the 22 class. Does that affect a guy looking at from a depth chart, am I going to get recruited over, so to speak, right out of the gate because this is a guy that they're that they're enamored with, and they've already offered also the Martin kid, and that type of thing work against.
But
you.
on the flip side, though, one could say, come again hypothetically, May 8th, 2 guys are not in this room anymore, and you're looking at it as like, all right, the likelihood is JG's going to start and play in 2020. Can I come in and compete with Harrison? And it's just, mano y mano. And I think most of us agree that a lot of these, most kids anyways, but quarterbacks particularly think that they can beat out anybody.
Especially if you're going to be a midterm enrollee, which most of the top end quarterbacks are.
Yeah, and if you feel like you're Jim Chaney's guy.
Well, and also, if you're going to go, not that Tennessee's on this level, but if you're looking at Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, you're going to be competing against a dude every year. There's not. These guys are bringing in, top 100 guys every single season.
Right.
There's no shoe in. You're going to have to compete if you're a quarterback, unless you just want to go to Vanderbilt.
Well, and then again, with the transfer stuff out there, and if that continues to grow,
huge.
All these kids know it's going to take care of itself. Anyway.
Come here for a year.
Come for a year. If it's not the fit for me, I can bolt.
Doesn't work out.
I can head somewhere else.
I'll go back home.
Because I don't we agree, and maybe you guys don't agree, that with only one ball to play with, that the most likely transfer position, particularly the position likely to use the new rule if it goes into a play more than anywhere else, is the
Well,
quarterback
they're already
spot.
using it.
Right, and I
mean,
think it's only going to get enhanced
totally.
at this point in time.
No question. And I think it also makes recruiting easier because of what you just said. I mean, you can say, so yeah, I know we've got Harrison Bailey. Come on in, see if see if we're a good fit, see if see how the competition goes. If you don't like it, go back to whatever your second choice was.
Yeah, I mean, I just think
No
those
harm,
guys,
no foul.
I think those guys are going to be moving. I mean, they always move around, but I think they're really going to be moving around, moving forward. Hey, let me tell you a little bit about Blue Water Climate Control, where you get your comfort today. When your system breaks, you want a company that will be there fast and do the right repair the right way the first time. Blue Water responds to more than 90% of their calls the same day that they are received. Blue Water offers 24-hour service, and all their technicians are trained and certified. Call 865-299-2290 today. Mention Volquest, and you'll get your diagnostic for free with repairs. That's 865-299-2290. You can check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate, or check them out online at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. All right, I talked about quarterbacks. What else in recruiting as Tennessee gets cranked back up? We know this junior day is coming. What's the priority for Tennessee? Is it in-state? Is it the North Carolina kids?
Oh, I think it's
both.
The priority is always going to be in-state.
Right.
But outside of that, I think it is the North Carolina kids, and then guys they have good shots with. Guys like Trinity Bell, who have, you've established yourself with to I think a pretty good degree. I don't know about what you feel like, Jesse, but I mean, I feel like this North Carolina class, Tennessee's in a good spot with some of them, but they've got to also, continue to put the pedal down, because there's going to be a lot of top-end programs in that state, battling it out for those kids.
Yeah, I mean, does Dillsworth come back to campus? I know Ritzy's planning on coming here. I think the Vols are going to I think they can ill afford to just move on from a guy like Washington. I mean, they got to continue to recruit Isaac Washington hard because, as he told you in his commitment interview, he seems to know a heck of a lot of these kids in North Carolina. And so the domino effect of that, I mean, again, I don't think you can ever overplay or you shouldn't overplay some of these, guys wanting to play with their buddies or whatever. Ultimately, guys are going to make the best decisions for them and their family. But those connections, certainly out of state, can help.
Well, they create comfort levels, which helps you decide what's best for you and your family. Let me ask this.
I do think Tennessee, I would say, and the number one kid from the Carolinas they got to get on campus in the next couple of weeks is Peyton Page. If they don't get if they don't get Page on campus, they can kiss that one goodbye.
Yeah, he's going to Clemson if they don't get him to campus. I agree with that. The goal is to have him here the March 7th weekend, and that's kind of what he's, reciprocated that thought process.
Is it more about geography, what areas guys come from for Tennessee, or is it a bigger deal that they get defensive linemen and edge guys on campus? A, because edge guys is a priority, but also B, because you've got two new position coaches there for those guys that these guys don't have relationships with. So you know what I'm saying? I mean, Jimmy Brumbaugh's coming from Colorado. He's probably not been calling a lot of kids in North Carolina. Shelton Felton's been recruiting for Akron. He's probably not been calling a lot of kids that is on his board at his position. Is it a bigger deal to get those positions in than it is in guys from a particular region?
Yeah, I think it's huge to get Jimmy and Shelton and those guys around these guys you want. I mean, when I talked to Ritzy this weekend, he's like, I really like Coach Brumbaugh, but he goes, we're just now starting to build a relationship. So you're starting from scratch. I mean, we saw the comments from Isaac Washington. I mean, I don't want to say that, Tracy Rocker and those guys poisoned Tennessee against Isaac Washington, but at the same time, I mean, he was pretty adamant they lost these two guys. Those were the two guys that called me and,
sure,
back on the market. He goes.
Yeah.
If you really like the school, shouldn't Tennessee still be one of the schools you're heavily interested in? The interview you did with Adam Friedman, I mean, it sounded like Tennessee wasn't even in the mix, but Tennessee's a school that still calls this kid. So, in my mind.
Well, Washington says he likes Jeremy. He likes Jeremy Pruitt too. I mean, I think you can get there and get yourself back in. I'm not saying you're going to get him, but I don't think. While right now he's done with Tennessee, I don't think that's a door slam that Tennessee could never, have a position to get him back on campus.
To me, they've got to get him back over here.
And that's a deal too, where it's much more. I agree. They got to get him back on campus. You see this with kids backing off or having concerns. The out-of-state kids are the ones that most having those relationships with their position coaches or area recruiters are most important. And and that's what he lost.
Right.
And so it's not surprising that, he felt some trepidation there.
Well, and that's one of the big reasons why, I won't say Tennessee's ascending for Jabari Ritzie, but Tennessee is at least, I think, a team that's in the mix, along with Georgia and several other schools for the kid, is the fact that, they are really like, the whole staff's recruiting Ritzie. I mean, he's talking to Jay Graham, he's talking to Brumbaugh, he's talking to Jeremy, he's talking to all these guys. And so I think it's the combination of how you recruit a kid as well. Yeah, the position coach is nice, but when you show them constant love from all these different angles, I think it's a real
I just think you got to get those guys on campus to meet your position coach.
It's not going to. It won't happen in early March. But does he come back for a spring practice, or does he come back for the orange and white game? I think one guy to really keep an eye on is Damian Robinson, because I think Tennessee Tennessee feels like they're pretty good there, but that's a kid whose stock is starting to soar, and more programs are calling him. More and more big teams are getting in on him. I just think that's going to be one that, if Tennessee can get them early, that'd be fantastic for the Vols. But if they don't, that's going to be one that's going to be a dogfight till the end.
Well, and I think I think it's going to be a dogfight anyway.
His tape's ridiculous,
yeah,
and now people are seeing that. And he's starting to visit. He's got plans to visit, I think, Ohio State and Georgia, and I don't know if it's Clemson. There's one other school that's out, maybe Penn State.
Right.
But it's he's got some visits lined up that then I think it would behoove Tennessee to get him back.
And you mentioned this in the chat too. Somebody asked you about of the new coaches, kind of big impact guys, and you mentioned Asavat in light of
that's a big one for him.
Yeah, that's his tie.
He's done a really good job with that one. The JUCO corner that Tennessee offered first, that really nobody knew who it was. He's now got Alabama, and he's got all these big-time offers
Georgia,
coming in.
Penn State.
I give Joe Asavat some credit. He, even before he got the job full-time, and before he even knew he was a factor, when he was a quality control guy, he was really working, and working a list and getting guys going. He got Tennessee in the door on some kids up that way early, where, quite frankly, Rob, Tennessee's not been a huge factor in recent years. Now, they've got some New Jersey success in their history, but Pennsylvania's not an area where Tennessee's just gone in and done well, and Maryland player here and there, but it's not like they've blanketed recruited those states the last 10 or 15 years.
No, I can remember. They used to have some New Jersey flavor.
Rashad Baker,
Turk McBride.
Well, when they had Al Rotella, and Al Rotella was a longtime Tennessee fan. Jamie, his son, played at Tennessee. New Jersey guys, and that was Tennessee's tie going back into the 80s and early 90s. That was their tie into New Jersey that helped them get established, and they carried some of those ties into the 2000s.
Never going to be a pipeline, but
right.
Obviously, if you could pop in there and get a guy like a Turk McBride every 2 or 3 years,
right.
that helps.
Helps program. This is totally an aside, but Tennessee, notably, first 2 recruiting classes under Pruitt, signed multiple junior college kids. This last cycle, 0. But I do think you're going to see them try to attack some at these spots that I identified in the, quote, needs area, cornerback, potentially outside linebacker. If you don't land some of your or don't feel like you're having enough traction with some of these prep guys, do you go after a couple JUCO guys that can come in here and do what, even what Durrell did last year in terms of playing, significant snaps.
Speaking of JUCO guys, this is water under the bridge. You imagine how much different this last class would have looked if they could have held on to Jordan Davis and Ojulari.
Well, Ojulari was not a JUCO guy, right?
No. But Jordan.
You're talking about
that just made me think
in
of
terms
Jordan.
of need. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of needs, no question. Losing BJ was a big deal in this class. That one hurt. Do you think JUCO makes some more sense now because your roster is more established and you're, instead of getting a bunch of JUCO guys to come in and fill spots, now you're plugging a specific need with a JUCO guy? 2-year gap here, 1-year gap here. Guys a little bit more established physically should be able to step in and play.
Yeah, it's
you can be a little more selective.
It's in the same. It's in the same. Phylum. I guess you could say as my whole case for that you should save 2 spots every year for grad transfers.
Yeah.
It's guys that you believe you can plug and play.
And I think
now the danger is signing a kid. We'll see what happens with him as a senior. The danger is signing a kid like Savion Williams, where you just ate a spot.
Yeah.
But they've also, I mean, I think they hit with Darrell Middleton. They hit with, I mean, DWA didn't live up to hype, but he was
a snap eater.
He was a serviceable player. I mean, I guess my point, they did a much better job at identifying guys who could help than the previous staff did. I mean, that was a
yeah. I mean, they're getting some
brutal JUCO signings.
They're getting some contribution out of the JUCO signing ranks that maybe it's not all world, but they are getting.
Kenneth George has been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean George has played some meaningful
He'll be the number 3 corner this year.
Golly,
some guys who can't get on the field at all.
There's a couple there.
Dontavius Blair.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on the defensive back. It was actually had 3 years to play.
Oh yeah, kid from Oklahoma, or Kansas or Oklahoma. I know you're talking about the.
And other than Alvin, who was not.
Everybody knew.
Alvin was like Cam Newton.
Yeah, he wasn't
like
a true JUCO guy,
but he didn't.
He wasn't a JUCO hidden gem.
Right.
Other than Alvin, I mean, they got virtually nothing.
Yeah, they didn't get a lot of impact there. Speaking of tight end,
Shaq Wiggins.
That was a grad transfer, wasn't it?
Worked out well, right? Speaking of, Rob mentioned DWA and tight ends, and you're going to have a piece on this a little bit later today, Jesse, in terms of kind of a pre-spring 2-deep depth chart, what it might look like, and we know that all can change a little bit. Without giving everything away, what's your biggest takeaway from looking at this team in the 2-deep? On the offensive side.
Well, the offensive line, I think, as everyone expects, even without Wanye, it's going to be a strength. I think the guard spots are going to have, Trey's penciled in, is cemented as the left guard, but, who kind of earns that number 2 role behind him? Does Akperigany have a chance to kind of carve out a backup role? You got some vets like Riley Locklear, right there. Right guard, what happens? Is Cade eligible? Is Cade not eligible? There's kind of door A and door B. If Cade is eligible, I think the expectation is he gets that spot. If not, it's Jerome Carvin with the kind of the Locklears and the guys behind him. And so I think that's notable and understandable. Huge spring for Jameer Johnson because you don't have Wanye. So can Jameer, really fight it out there at left tackle? But then the most glaring, just easily thing, aside from the just sheer amount of bodies in the quarterback room and how they sort that out in terms of reps, is what the heck they're going to do at tight end. Because while it's an easy position to dismiss, the amount of 12 personnel that Jim Chaney used last year was over 50-some-odd%, according to PFF, which that's a lot. And then that's playing 2 tight ends, not just so one. You're accounting for Austin Pope to stay healthy the whole season, which he barely managed last year for the first time in his career.
I mean, he did play with a partially torn hamstring.
And 2, who's going to be the number 2 tight end? Is Princeton Fant physical enough to play that role? Is Jacob Warren? Is there a lot of confidence in Jackson Lowe? I don't think so. Sean Brown.
I mean, don't you think for those 2 guys, it's go time now for Sean. I mean, I'm not saying your career's over if you don't play, but I mean, you're a redshirt freshman. The window is wide open for
and there's
you
a position and there's an opportunity.
Oh, the door has never been more open for a group of guys. You're right. Not to chain react, their career's not over if they don't play this year, but at the same time, you're probably never going to have a greater opportunity with the depth and the quality and it's true. I think Sean Brown is the guy coming off this offseason surgery that needs to have a big spring. To me, he needs to be able to take a real big step. There's some quiet optimism about Princeton Fant. Now we'll see. He's still going to prove it, but he's definitely the most athletic guy.
But can he be physical enough?
Yeah, he's also. I mean, like we've heard
and stay healthy.
I mean, Jeremy has spoken praise about Princeton Fant publicly multiple times, and yet he still gets yo-yoed between 3 different positions. Right. He was working at wide receiver, tight end, and running back for 3 out of the 4 different weeks there in the middle of the season a year ago.
He's like Aaron Beasley.
So I mean, it's and I put this in the depth chart piece. The thing is, there's really 2 spots available at tight end because the number 3 tight end a year ago was Andrew Craig,
Who's
you know
not playing.
who's you know opted to early retire or you know kind of move on with his life. So that's a position that I think this spring is going to be big for. Running back, you kind of know what you have. I think it's Eric Gray, you know, Ty Chandler. What happens behind them with 3 new bodies entering the mix?
Well, I mean, where's Tim Jordan?
Where's Tim Jordan? Where's
Carlin Fields
CFA?
will be,
Because you're going to have 3 sign. The whole thing is at the I don't put the signees that aren't here on it. This is who is here in the spring and how it kind of is going to play out from there. So that's kind of the big takeaways offensively.
Rob, I'm putting Austin Pope probably in a bubble for spring.
That's so true.
I mean, I mean, seriously.
you would never
in a
think about
bizarre
it.
way, he's as valuable, you know, because there's nothing behind him. He's as important to you as anybody on your offense.
You're a sprained ankle away from, you know, finding out what Jacob Warren can give you, or Sean Brown, or, you know, somebody along those lines.
And he's had a history of shoulder problems and everything else. I'm serious. I don't know how much I beat him up in spring practice.
Nobody's going to agree.
Look, he is what he is. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
and for that very reason, though, nobody's going to agree with me on this, and they won't do this. That's why if somehow Cade won his appeal, and you feel pretty good where you are with all your linemen, I tell whatchamacallit, Jameer Johnson, just to keep losing the weight, play him out there on the edge and teach him some tight end. Heck, he's about skinny enough to play it anyway.
Let him be a jumbo guy.
Yeah,
that could be an interesting thought. I mean, look, if you don't have anything you feel really good about behind Pope and Fant can do some things, but probably not going to be a straight inline guy. I mean, maybe you do go jumbo with 6. We saw Jim Chaney try to line up with 7 offensive linemen at different points this past year.
That would certainly be an alternative. I mean, I don't think they're going to ask Jameer to play a straight tight end.
No.
Think,
but like in certain sets, why not?
Just a 6 line.
He seems like pretty athletic though that could actually release out.
Just play a 6-man line.
Yeah, just as a straight up extra blocker, downhill in a run game type deal. You know, you could certainly possibly look at that. I mean, I think you're going to have to be creative there is the point. I think that's the point you're making, Austin. Whoever it is, I think Jim Chaney, you can't just plug in necessarily the next guy. I think you're going to have to look at some creativity at the tight end position.
And this is going to be something to watch next season, early in the season. Hypothetically, let's say Fant does earn that number 2 job, but does Tennessee start really tipping their hand play calling wise when Fant's on the field versus Pope's on the field? Mm-hmm. Because, you know, if you think Fant's the better receiver or what have you, DWA again wasn't fantastic, but did improve from year 1 to year 2 as a blocker, where you weren't showing your hand, you weren't predictive, and so that I think that'll be something to watch, because if it gets where it's obvious where you know if 81's on the field, they're running it. And if Fant's on the field, you know, he's going to split out wide, and he's JG's safety valve. That becomes a problem for Tennessee's offense.
Last thing here, and we'll get out the door. We're going to talk about this more in spring practice, certainly. Where does Calvert fit into this offensive line?
I think he's got a shot at right tackle.
Well, especially with, I mean, this is a massive.
He and Darnell Wright.
I think that's a competition at right tackle.
I do, but I mean, one of them is going to be forced to play left tackle this spring. Do you not think? Or they just go play Jameer Johnson over there and say 72 and 60, or 72 and 74 wear it out at right tackle.
I think you got to.
I would. I'm not a coach, so they're going to do what they want to do. If I was coaching Tennessee's offensive line, I would say Jameer works at left tackle, and when Wanye comes back, that's that competition. And at right tackle, you have Calvert versus Darnell, and may the best man win.
Well, when you're fully healthy there, and how much do they cross-train this spring, you know, with that position, and how much can a guy like Darnell in his second year mentally handle the cross-train thing? Same thing with Calvert, who's played pretty much right side his whole career, inside at guard or outside at tackle. You know, can you flip-flop across the line? You know, I know they like to cross-train, but is that 2 guys that cross-training them to the opposite side where everything's opposite hand-wise, is that going to affect them from a development? Because I think for Darnell Wright, this spring is huge.
Massive.
I think it's huge. I mean, I think he was okay as a freshman, survived.
Well, and played the last several games with a bum ankle and over.
Right. So can he take the next step?
And Calvert really came on. Mm-hmm. And you know,
and beat him out.
Yeah, we know that they like his physicality, but the question is, can he stay healthy, and can he be the consistent guy that he wants? And if you flip-flop them, does that mess with them? I think that's something that Will Friend, Jim Chaney and those guys have to decide.
And I will say, I would not be surprised if they do cross-train some, mainly because Tennessee, honestly, while the offensive line has a nice collection of bodies, if with the uncertainty surrounding Cade, because I think Cade is another guy who could play right tackle, not left, but could play. I mean, he did play left tackle in Georgia's bowl game, but I think
that's not home.
That's not home.
That was out of necessity.
He could play right tackle, but it's best inside. If you don't know what Cade's situation is, you really only have 4 tackles that you trust on this roster. I don't think we see them playing Ollie Lane out at tackle.
Right.
So you got Calbert, Wright, Morris, and Johnson. So it would behoove you to cross-train some, but in terms of a sheer competition, I do think I would distill it down to Wright versus Calbert at right tackle.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price, I'm Brett Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.